The most amazing thing is I saw this car in a museum, although maybe not this exact one, but what struck me were the monitors embedded in the headrests, which here have been ripped out by looters. And it was a Clarion, not just some Pioneer or whatever. Yeah, it really looks like it just escaped from prison. Let's keep the intrigue until the end, and you'll understand why I couldn't resist and rush to film it before it was fully restored. I wanted to touch a legend and the state in which it has survived. I can say with confidence, if you look past the wear and the fact that the car has suffered for a long time, you can imagine how it drove 24 years ago. How freaking awesome is that? This is our brand, and it's something to be proud of. The ways of the Lord are mysterious. I thought I was done with Moskviches, but my subscribers and just generous folks who don't mind sharing sometimes send me amazing specimens. That's exactly what happened this time. Does the appearance of this specimen look familiar to you? Yes, it's controversial, some might put it more harshly, but it's simply impossible not to recognize the model. It looks like the Moskvich 2142-42 or Ivan Kalita. It's a vivid example of how people far removed from automotive engineering try, relying on their so-called professionalism, to create an executive car. You don't have to be a prophet to realize that the 2141 would become outdated quickly. Its creators understood this as well. At the Lenin Komsomol plant, they began developing a new Moskvich as soon as the 2141 rolled off the assembly line. They planned to launch the new Moskvich in 1992. It would have been just what was needed at the time. But the winds of change completely swept away the country's money and the ability to build a new car under the AZLK 2142 index. It was the 2142 that was intended to be the flagship of the model lineup. About 30 prototype sedans were built. I was lucky enough to get acquainted with one of them. Once again, thanks to a subscriber. The realization that the Moskvich was morally outdated and would never be old again pushed the genius leader of huge factories, Comrade Asatrian, to revive the 2142 project. But, so to speak, as he, Comrade Asatrian, saw it the revival of the project. Most likely, he never saw this project at all. Even if you just look at the sketches of the future model drawn by Sakyan, you can see a significant difference. There, it's a light, well-balanced car. Here, it's a victim. But, as they say, I'm an artist. That's how I see it. But the main thing is this. The project by the Soviet designers at AZLK, the 2142, and this Knyaz are, as they say, two completely different things. There, it was an industrial sedan, while this is a creative work assembled from cut-up bodies of the Moskvich 2141 and a number of original components. The central part of this exhibit is immediately recognizable to everyone as being from the 41st, except for the rear elongated doors and pillars. And then comes the magic, crafted by the hands of the factory workers. For example, the roof is similar to that of the Prince Vladimir, as is the rear section. In fact, there are quite a lot of original components here. The most outstanding and somewhat startling elements are, of course, the rear lights and the front headlights. And what do you think about the steel, not plastic, radiator grille? Only Rolls-Royce could afford such luxury, and Asatrian. Maybe I'm repeating myself, but this part on top is a cover that protects the headlight itself. The headlight itself is imported, hella, although maybe it's ours Avtosbet, from the city of Kirzhach. So what makes this car I'm telling you about unique? You won't believe it. First of all, it's not a 2142, it's a 21 to get this 44. Don't confuse it with the AZLK 2144 Istra, which died before it was even born, mind you. Secondly, this Moskvich is all-wheel drive. The development of the all-wheel drive transmission at Moskvich started a long time ago and was done independently. There were many trials and errors, but in the end, everything came together. It was quite reliable, and naturally, it was tested by the factory team's race drivers, and they tested it hard. I'll go even further. It passed the factory tests, and there were plans to install the all-wheel drive transmission on the 41st Moskvich models. However, as soon as the 41st Moskvich got it, it immediately became the 21416. But once again, things didn't work out. But the Comrade General Director remembered about it. I should tell you a bit about the design, because this is one of those cases where we should be proud of a domestic development even if it was scrapped. Let's start with the gearbox, which is attached to the longitudinally mounted engine, and from it, the drives go to the front wheels. The main drive for the front wheels is combined with the gearbox in a single unit, and the center differential is also integrated. But to drive the rear axle, they had to install a different tailpiece, their own, with a secondary shaft from the gearbox. From it comes a drive that turns the rear axle's differential. By the way, the gearbox housing itself is entirely unique as well. The rear suspension is independent, original, from Moskvich. Of course, some critics will say that it resembles the rear suspension of the Ford Sierra. So what? But they made it themselves. The design includes a subframe or support beam, and the lower control arms are attached to it with bushings. The control arms are positioned diagonally. This solution has a positive effect on comfort, as it dampens longitudinal and horizontal vibration. And despite the relative simplicity of the design, it also helps maintain consistent wheel alignment angles dynamically when cornering. Furthermore, the design includes shock absorber struts and an anti-roll bar. The rear axle differential is rigidly attached to the body via a beam. The CV joints are similar to those at the front, but the differential itself is quite a clever piece of engineering. They were made in Omsk. According to some sources, about 100 of them were produced differentials in gearboxes. In concept, they are very reminiscent of the differentials from the Moskvich 21 to 40. Well, why not? All genius is simple. So what else do we see? The fuel pump is from a Volga. The fuel filter, everything is placed in a very odd way, almost as if it was done on purpose so it would rot. It just hit me now seeing all this in person that the front part of the drive shaft is actually a cut-down Moskvich CV joint with a welded-on universal joint. Have you seen the tailpiece? Here it is. Right here, there's an oil seal. What is that, about 70 centimeters? The drive shaft is also custom-made, but it has an intermediate support. Because of the rear-wheel drive, the location of the fuel tank had to be changed. It was placed on the right side as a temporary solution that, in the short term, became permanent. A truly big ship certainly needs a very big voyage. Here, please take a closer look. The impressive Renault F7R engine featuring 16 valves, a 2-liter displacement, and producing 147 horsepower according to the official specifications. A good engine? The French developed it for sports cars. It turned out to be a magnificent engine, so they decided to put it everywhere. The cylinder block is traditionally made from high-strength cast iron sleeves. It has an aluminum alloy cylinder head, 2 camshafts. The engine uses a timing belt drive and hydraulic lifters. If you look closely, there's an air conditioning compressor here. All the lines are in place. They even laid the wiring and pierced the firewall, but it doesn't reach the cabin. See here the wires, the air conditioner. It's also worth mentioning the interior. All right, everyone, the working shift is officially over now. All the Knyaz models were quite luxurious by the standards of regular Moskviches. As I mentioned, in our case, there was a Clarion sound system, and I'm heading to the back. There's even a refrigerator. Comfort. For 2 bottles of wine. Individual lighting in the middle, on the left, and on the right. Beautiful. And the seats themselves are actually very comfortable, by the way. Not anatomical, but pleasant. A button for heating something, probably the seats. Wow, it's heavy! Chrome-plated trunk hinges. My hands are even shaking from the weight. Chrome-plated! And by the way, all the covers have numbers. Here, 740. 7, that's the body number, it turns out. What else? In our case, the interior is fully leather trimmed. The interior style, again, is a matter of taste. The Autolift seats are from the Volvo 850, but for some reason, the adjustments are manual. The steering wheel is also adjustable. Its lineage clearly traces back to the Peugeot 406, but here it's with wood. On top of that, there are 4 Bosch power windows here. Acceleration to 100. Fuel consumption, who even cares about that today? What I want to say is, the all-wheel drive on the Moskvich works in a peculiar way. It's permanent, with a Quaife-type self-locking helical differential. But it's almost impossible to notice this on a dry road or on asphalt until you really throw it into a corner. And the car doesn't stray from its line, it glides down smoothly and confidently, all by itself. If I were to draw a parallel in terms of feel, it's like an Audi Quattro, just a bit more awkward. If it had the standard body from the 41st, everything would be just right, but here it's a bit of a crocodile. Another interesting thing, when reversing, the rear-wheel drive doesn't work. That's a downside. I kept wondering, what is that strange little button to the right under my foot? Turns out, it's for turning on the refrigerator. Moreover, you can set the refrigerator to either freeze or heat mode. And another thing, the gear lever moves diagonally in neutral, not left to right. And now, for a twist! This very car was on display at the AZLK Scientific and Technical Center as an exhibition piece until 2001. Then, some court bailiffs somehow confiscated it, and it spent 20 years in a shell garage, and then another 5 years in a garden. The car was saved, and it will definitely be restored. And maybe I'll tell you more about it again later. But for now, my hunt continues.